first of all, I want to thank everybody being on this call. I know that you guys could be doing a million different important things, but you chose to be here, so I really appreciate it. Thank you. And wanted to just give you a little bit of a quick introductory of who I am, what am I, why we're doing this, before we dive into our exciting topic of strategies for optimized assortment creations. So we'll talk about a lot of great opportunities of how to create assortments to make sure that the data-driven decisions, how do we implement the lean design models, looking at how to align assortment management with your customers. So we have a lot of great topics that we're going to cover, and we're really excited about this. But just a couple of words about who I am and why I'm doing this. I've been in the fashion industry for 25 years, sat from executive roles for really multi-million-dollar brands, built over 19 private label brands that for retailers. So I have the expertise and the knowledge in working in the assortment creation. So this kind of what validates of why I'm going to have this topic with you and discuss it. But really, it's been my passion since I was 4. So I've dedicated my life to fashion industry, and 25 years into it, I've decided that I wanted to give back to the community, and this is why we're doing this roundtable. So it's absolutely not a sales call. I am not going to try to sell you anything, so don't try to drop off at the end of the call. It's really truly about us coming together and be collaborative and talking about some of the pressing topics, learning from one another, meeting some new faces, and hopefully collaborating in the future with whatever the projects that you are working on. So really excited to start. I hope you guys are too. Let's do thumbs up if you are. And let's kind of dive into the first topic that I wanted to open up the conversation with, is identifying some of the pain points to discuss, so that we can discuss what are some of the pain points about the assortment creation that you guys are particularly experiencing, so that we can address them on this call. And as well as kind of helps us to kick off our conversation. So Richard, I'll start with you, just because I'm looking right at you and in my center of my screen. So what are some of the pain points around the assortment creation that you currently have?
So I started a company that makes women's jeans, and we donate 15% of the profits towards women going through cancer. To help them get wigs, and it was something I started because of my mom who had cancer. So that's kind of the basis of what we do. That's why we make jeans. It's the jeans are more of a means to provide the necessary funding to be able to help these individuals that are going through this struggle. So that's kind of the basis of what we do.
Mm-hmm. And what pain points do you have when you're creating the assortment for your jeans?
I'm sorry, which one was it?
What are the pain points that you experience when you are creating the assortment for the jeans?
Well, the creating part wasn't as challenging as it is reaching our customers. We since we're not a very well-known brand, it's challenging for us to do online sales, because we found that a lot of our customers, which are women, like to see how they feel in their jeans, see how they look in them. And since they're not familiar with our brand, it's been harder to connect with them online, which is why we've been looking more into retail outlets, small stores around the Denver area or wherever, so that our customers can connect with the jeans. And then they know what they look like and how they feel in them and stuff, so that in the future they could buy them directly from us online.
Very good. And so one of the thought that comes to my mind around what you are just describing, and that kind of goes back to Phoenix's pain point that we just earlier discussed, is one of the things that we see is how do we get the trust of the customer, right? To be able to purchase that particular product, especially when it comes to online sales. And what we see a lot of times that is missing when we are creating the assortment is that we are really relying on just that one thumbnail image, or potentially a couple of the different variations of the images, to be able to hopefully grab the attention of the customer, but also gain the trust that this particular product will fit. But we a lot of time underestimate how much information and how accessible and easy to read that information we provide, for the customer to understand how your product actually fits. So 360 videos are currently for e-commerce sales would be absolutely must as a part of the including as part of your product pages and product descriptions. Having very clear size charts, but not in addition to size charts, have a very clear guide how to measure their body as well to be able to retrofit it into a size chart. A lot of companies are nowadays are just posting, well, here's my size charts relevant to the sizes of sec 2, 3, 4, the 2, 4, 6, 8. But what they're not realizing that even the size 2, 4, 6, 8 can vary depending on the market, depending on the region, depending on the brand. So giving the guidance to the customer of how to measure themselves and simply to plot that into your potentially a customized size chart where you can actually plot in your measurements and it will tell you exactly what size would work for them. That's what we are seeing customers what some of the brands who are succeeding are gravitating towards, and that's working for them. Samuel, do you want to add on that moment? Because I know you have always a great ideas from the technology end of how to overcome that challenge as well, with some virtual fittings opportunities on 3Web and so forth. Do you want to chime in on some of that as well?
Yeah, it's difficult for sizing as far as fashion goes because of the different types of grading by country, different body types by country, regions. Even here in the U.S., you have different regions that have different body types. The Midwest is a little bit more full of figured. Your New Yorkers are a little bit slimmer and more like, and so it's hard to come up with a true fit for products online. And it's gonna constantly be until we get into creating the avatars where we can actually try the products on the avatars and be able to see the fit based on hot and cold spots on the product. So there's a lot of technology that's coming, and we have to implement it. And that's the hardest part right now is getting people just to use the technology that we have. The biggest problem that I see with the fashion industry is it doesn't understand technology, and the technology industry doesn't understand fashion. So there has to be some kind of bridge right now to bring them all together, and it's very difficult. Probably one of the most difficult things you can do, because when you're fashion people, they say we're going to lose our creative part if we use the technology, and the technology people say, well, they're too slow, they're not moving fast enough. So it's a real tough spot to be in, especially when you start talking about fit. Fit's the hardest thing we're going to do. And what is it? I think there's 70% returns from online products for fit.
Yeah, that's pretty high from what I've heard. So
what have you heard?
I've heard it was around 70% was what you just said for the return rates. So
yeah, okay. I thought you saying I was high, but that's what I've heard is 70%.
Oh no, I said I've heard it was high like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
So it's hard. That's the hardest thing. That's the thing that we're going to have to overcome as a fashion industry, is how to overcome the fit issue. And that's going to be more technology as far as how to utilize this technology within the fits. And it's not just the sizing, because like I said, when you start looking at the grading by country, it's a completely different grading system. The Europeans have a wider waist and smaller hips. The Americans have bigger asses and smaller waist. So you have to adjust for all that in the fit. And you go through the Midwest and they've got big butts and small waist, and in New York, smaller. It's just no matter how much exercise you're getting, how much as to the body types. And that's where we're running to the problems at, is the different body types.
But Samuel, you're also bringing up a good point, because, when we are looking at such a high diversity of regions or diversity of countries that you're trying to service to, it really goes back to importance to truly understanding who your customer is.
Correct.
So your customer is that Missy woman, right? That would be that Midwest, for example, Middle America type of a customer. Well, you need to make sure you analyze what that particular average fit size should be so that you can be able to build your fit specifically catering to that customer. You can't be everywhere, and you can't go from 0 to extra plus sizes and call yourself an expert. So you got to identify where your pocket market is, right? Whether that's a Missy fit, where that is the plus sizes, whether that is really more of the Asian fit, kind of like the slim and fit that we're talking about. And be the best at that, right? Be the best at what you can possibly be. That's where I say that it's important, if we are able to integrate the technologies of where the customer can actually enter their measurement. And again, you only need the basic measurements, right? Waist, hip, and inseam, at least to start with. And that can give them exact match to the size that your brand would actually recommend, you already taking some of that guesswork out. What we also started to see that's a great way to bypass such a high return rate is to build up a model where they can be able to try on a product for a small fraction of the price that let's say I give you an example, right? So let's say for $10 that they are able to receive the package with, let's say, 1 or 2 sizes of product, they fit it, they try them on, and then they have to return it back, right? If they don't return it, obviously you have to charge them for the full price. But if they return that back, then they can be able to get the actual product that is coming from now your warehouse, and they will not return that because they already tried to fit it. So it's kind of creating that type of a customer experience where they're able to do that. Zini actually doing that with glasses. I don't know if you guys are familiar with Zini brand. So they do that with glasses, and they've solved a huge problem for themselves by doing that to minimize the amount of the returns, which means the problem with the returns is not just the shipping cost, right? Biggest problem with the returns is the product that arrives back. It's either already damaged or not able to put right back on the shelves, right? Because you probably have to like repackage and do whatever else you need to do with it. So by doing this kind of try on options, you're minimizing the amount of returns as well. So just thinking about some of those other aspects, or potentially doing the in-store kind of pop-up events where people can come in and try on your product, or it's kind of like more of a showroom type of a thing where they can come in and try on your product. Usually you want to locate that in a highly trafficked areas, and then you lead them back to your website to be able to go out and buy your product. You only need to win that customer once. Once they understand that your fit is consistent, then they will keep coming back and buying your product with less of a risk that they're going to return it back and forth. So just especially in the jeans market, I mean, this is really all about the fit and all about the quality.
I would like to chime in. They do have this early software called 3D Look. It allows you to put your camera on something and it kind of like measures you. It's supposed to be like some type of airless software. I could put it in the chat. I don't know if they do like licensing where you can put it on your platform, but I'm pretty sure they do because I think a few brands use it already. Again, it's not 100% yet, but I think they're pretty much getting there. You can basically download the app and it basically gives you your size.
Wow, that's really cool.
So
it's pretty new.
So just thinking about how can you differentiate your brand from the customer experience online, right? So that you're not competing with all the big brands who are truly just selling, based on pictures and potentially even just the video and the picture. But what can you add extra to really gain that customer's trust that once they're going to put those measurements or utilizing to your point, 3D Look, Tony, thank you for suggesting that's a great one. That they could be able to really gain that trust that this is going to fit them.
I saw that app for a jeans company as well, actually this morning. And you order the jeans, it does your inseam, your waist, and everything that you need for the perfect fitting jeans.
There you go.
And it's not 100% though. I think they're going to get there probably in maybe 6 months because I tried it, but it's.
That's all great. It's dandy that we got all these new technologies, but a lot of them haven't been proven yet, and we've got to really be careful jumping into and destroying your reputation because of the haven't been verified. And the biggest issue that I see right now is the difference in the regional fits, and that's where you're going to run into problems because you can have the same sizes, but they're not the same fit from the body types. And the body types are really the biggest issue, not the fit. And I'm sorry, not the sizes, it's the body types. And that's where you have the biggest problems. I've been making jeans for the last 40 years, Levi Strauss, Gloria Vanderbilt, Jones New York. And I can tell you that you can go into a store and all the jeans are the same size as far as the specs, and every one of them has a different fit. And it's all about the way that the pants are made, the way that the stitching is done. It's all in the make of the product. So
And the
you have to
curve.
really in the cut. Yeah.
And the
So-
cut, yeah. So it's important for the curve cut to really, and again, how do you translate that, right, to your customer? So just have to think, you are the customer yourself. What do you information you need to really truly understand that?
And we have to be careful right now returning products, because the law states that in the circular economy, that once a product goes out and it comes back to you, it is not a new product anymore. It's a
process.
Mhm.
yeah. So that you've just destroyed your margins and your goods by shipping it out, plus the cost of freight. And inflation right now is driving freight costs up so high that even Amazon's quit giving away free freight to a lot of things right now. So there's a lot of variables that we're working with that we have to work around now. But the best thing is, how do we incorporate the retail store back into your circular economy? And that's what we've got to figure out how to do now. And the retail stores have to quit being so passive and become more interactive.
Agreed.
For sure.
For sure, 100%. Thank you, guys. This was really great way to start our discussion.
That was really, really helpful. And I got great notes here. So thank you.
Good, good. I'm really excited to hear that. Well, next thing I wanted to kind of think about is talking about the data-driven decisions making when we actually create the assortment. And that goes hand to hand with balancing the variety and the cohesiveness of our assortments. So common challenge that I see throughout clients that we work with is that they over design and they overproduce. So we are currently right now are up against trying to figure it out, and as well as lead of how do we do it with design, starting from the designing and assortment creation to minimize waste in general, right? So if we think of a little bit of like take that kind of into our minds and step back, and where I wanted to kind of start with is that a lot of times when we design, we don't really rely on data so much. We actually design on our trends and gut feeling. And so we're a lot, and especially when you're starting brand, it's very difficult because you don't have the sales data to rely on just yet, right? So what kind of data can you potentially pull from other sources that can help you make the educated decision of what your assortment, breadth of assortment should look like at the beginning? And obviously make sure that you set up your data points to collect enough attributes so that you can then, over the course of a few years, start to make educated decision on how you're going to expand your assortment and what you're going to focus on. Anybody want to jump in to kind of add to that before I start to unveiling that a little bit further? All right. So wanted to start off with, thinking about where do we take the data when we are just starting up and we don't have any sales data to rely on. So a couple of things. Obviously, we have statistical data that we can pull on fits by region, by race, by location, by looking at different competitive brands of who you're planning to target as a customer, right? So making sure that whatever that you are creating yourself is aligned with the fits and the styling and the look with the customer that your competitive brands are creating, because they've done this for years. So why not learn from them? So one of the tangible data that you'll be able to collect is going after those brands as an example and analyzing what they're doing. How many styles are they introducing per season? What type of silhouettes that they're introducing per season? Looking at what went on sale and how quickly it went on sale, because obviously if it goes up, product that goes on sale will go, especially towards the end of the season, you know that product most likely either been overproduced or have not sold as well as the things that sold out. So spending the time and planning to really learning about your competitors and understanding of what they are doing, it helps to collect the data that you can be able to base your initial assortments on. Then it's really critical for us to make sure that we have the right attributes when we are presenting our next assortment going forward. Many brands and many of our clients fail in that particular moment because they do collect attributes that are very common, which would be the size, the color, potentially the cut, and then the product class and product category. but they don't go as far and deep as fabric, cut, particularly maybe you have a specific curve cut on one style versus the other, hardware, looking at collecting data, whether that's, you know, one type of a pocket versus a different type of a pocket. The more attributes you're able to build in the back end of each of your product and be able to collect data on what sells, you can then analyze it, let's say a year down the road or 2 to 3 years down the road would be the best once you actually can get the traction of sales. Now you can make educated decision of what you're going to keep in your assortment as a bread and butter and what is you going to expand on and potentially leave some little small portion on introducing the newness. What we see a lot of times that happens, that and this happens with many entrepreneurs, especially who are just starting out, because they're so excited about what they are going to present that they tend to over design. They tend to come up with collections of 20, 30, 50 styles, and then they haven't even sold it, and the next season comes and all of a sudden they're creating another 30, 40, 50 styles. So a lot of times what we recommend is to take a step back and kind of apply A is 80-20 rule. And 80-20 rule is that there's always 20% of your assortment that drives 80% of your sales. And so once you understand what that 20% is, everything else is just a waste. It's a noise that you can honestly just take it and throw it away. Because what you're doing by having all that noise and the tail, long tail, is that you are tying up your resources, you're tying up your cash flow on creating this really beautiful product, but it's if the increments and impact of that's in sales are so little, does it really worth the time and efforts to focus on that, right? So when we find the 20% that drives 80% of your sales, that's what I love to call it as bread and butter of the business, right? That is your essentials. And your customer will help you to identify that with very short period of time in just within first few seasons, if not less than that, they will identify fairly quickly that they will gravitate to this 1, 2, maybe 3 styles in your product assortment, because that is what they think and they have identified that's working for them, and you're specializing in that particular styles. So make that as your essentials. With that, you're able to now maximize the amount of investment that you have spent on R&D, right? What we are often seeing that if we are creating new product every season, all the resources that you just spend on creating patterns, choosing fabrics, doing the fits, whether you sold well or didn't sell well, if you throw in that style right out of the gate, that you just literally took a chunk of bag of money and then you just threw it out of the window. So if you're thinking about more strategically to say, okay, that 20% that drives 80% of my sales is going to be my essential styles that customer can come in and buy it season after season. Yes, can you update some color? Yes, can you introduce another color in addition to your staple colors as an example? Maybe you are changing a tiny bit, maybe you change the button on it, whatever it is. There's so many ways you can spin it that it still feels fresh and new and exciting for customers to buy, but you're also having that essential product that your brand is known for that. So once we identify that essentials, then my always recommendation is to look at the assortment, the breadth of assortment that you try to create, is to look at what I love to do is 70-30 or 60-40 rule. 60-40 rule, I would probably recommend that for more of a larger brands and retailers, because they do need to be able to keep their floor full. For smaller brands, I recommend to even apply 70-30 rule. And what does that mean? 70% of your assortment season over season is either your essential or the expansion within your essential base product. And only 30% of that is what you want to reserve on something that I would call newness. But newness also has to be done very strategic. It doesn't mean that now you're going to go and create, if you are in jeans, and that doesn't mean that we are reserving this 30% into now bringing jackets, coats, and bags, right? We still want to keep that 30% within your product categories that you're really well known for. But take that 30%, and then now take out of that 30%, 5 to 10% is what you want to reserve, what I call it, on testing. Because you do want to test something that's out of the box, right? Maybe it's potentially a different cut of a pant, or maybe it's a completely something, a product category that complements your product as well. And the reason why I want to reserve this on those little tests, and typically what I recommend is, don't test it by creating it from scratch. Test it as a white label. Find another supplier that's doing something similar to what you are thinking of going. Get a small portion. I mean, when we're talking about testings, we sometimes can even do it on demand, or in many cases, we can buy very small in pieces or do a drop ship. And if we're able to do that, we can constantly testing our customer for what might throw in those little bullets, right? If we think about the flywheel, and see what is actually will stick with our customer, that then we can bring that in and invest and expand. So that's how you always stay relevant and new. The rest of the 25% of that 30% of newness, you want to focus on new potential styles, colors, but we always suggest to bucket them in the fabrications that you already successful in and that are part of your essentials. Don't create another new fabric category, because that's going to, again, expand into your issues that you are dealing with the resources. And now you're going to have difficult to meet MOQs. And now you're going to have a difficult challenge to meet the price point that you're trying to compete with. But if you're creating that newness in the fabrics or in the hardwares that are already tested and proven, you already, just by that, a simple move, minimizing a huge, tremendous amount of risk. Risk that it will not sell, risk that it potentially will come damaged, or risks that you're going to overproduce, and then because you had to buy so much to meet your MOQ, and you weren't able to meet the actual sales trajectory. Only when your tests are coming to the velocity of 60 to 70% sell-through, only then you want to consider that is a worth style that you're now going to be able to invest in a bulk inventory that you could be able to sell through that. The caveat to all of this that I just mentioned is there's a big pitfall, is that you have to have a eagle eye on your sales trajectory, even on your essentials, because every product has its peak time and every product has its fall time. So even the essential product that you do have, we want to make sure that we ride the peak and we catch it at the moment when it starts to fall down, so that you can either make an update, or you give in a new uplift, or change that style into another proven style that potentially you have. Another great strategy is to rotate your essentials. Potentially you have a 1 year or 1 season, you have 3 of your essential styles, and you kind of sold out of all the 2 other essential styles, assuming your assortment is 5 styles. And then the next time you flip it, right? You have now you reintroducing, which we're calling bring them out of the vault, the other 2 styles, and then you are resting the other 3, right? So just like the farmers doing the harvesting, and they're changing the time when they're going to use the fields, right? So they're making that interchanging. One year they do one field, the other year they do the other field. We can do the same thing with our essential styles. This is how we can able to keep our customers keep coming back and a reason to buy. What are your guys' thoughts on that?
I think it's fantastic. What I have found that has been working, and I really love what everyone's saying about the fit and the sizes. It's talking to women, and I've been expanding how I'm creating it, so it's not a particular size. It can go from maybe a 4 to a 10, but just making the fit where it's complementary, where it's accessing those sizes at once, because it is horrible when somebody sees something online and they send it back. So just working with that and listening to women, like what's comfortable, how do certain fabrics feel. And it's been really interesting, and just growing with what's going on with circular and sustainable fashion. So what you're saying is so on point about the 2080. It really resonated with me. So thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you, Phoenix. I appreciate for your thoughts. Samuel, I saw you were nodding, so I'd love to hear your thoughts.
I think I think you're just giving some of the best information you could give any designer starting out a product line, is to understand what their blank bodies are, and that has to be proven by their customer. And that's what you were talking about on the 80/20. What are those 80, the 5 styles in your line out of the 300 that you've made that equates to 80% of your sales? And that's what we do. Once we hit our blank bodies, then all we do is change fabrics and add color or whatever you're saying. But we also know that 50% of our business is going to be done in denim at the retail level. We also know that another 25% right now is being done in leggings. And then the rest of it, t-shirts are 5 times any item that we have on the floor, but because of the price, the volume's not there. But it is 5 times the sale of any item on the floor. So if you really wanted to get into a business to start out with that you could hit the minimums with, t-shirts are the easiest business to get into because you can sell so many more t-shirts than you can anything else on the floor because of the price and the way people look and buy t-shirts. The other thing is black is always 50% of our production. No matter what we cut, we always cut 50% in black, because if you got a markdown, you want it to be in black. You don't want it to be in turquoise. And so that's how we kind of like break it out. The retailer knows that when they buy their proven products, it's a 2.2 markup. When they buy that fashion part that you're talking about, they mark it 2.5 because they know they've got to build a markdown in up front. But they also know that by doing that, they're giving the customer a chance to try out new products and even if they buy it on the markdown rack, it's got it on the customer's body. So those are just some of the basics, but you hit it right on the head. It was you couldn't have given them any more information than what you just given them to build their line out. And just think about it though, black is the #1 selling item. How many turquoise leggings do you see on Lululemon? They're all black.
They're all black, absolutely. Go stick with the essentials. You know, and that, to your point, it's a very critical piece that you've mentioned and this is why I mentioned about us talking about collecting the right attributes, right? Because you can then analyze and apply the 80/20 rule to color, to fabric, to hardware, to pocket cuts, to garment cuts. I mean, there's so many different, if you're doing t-shirts, you can even apply 80/20 rule to understand whether your customer gravitates towards V-necks versus scoop necks versus crew necks, right? So that's very critical, is to make sure that you're setting up your data points ahead of time in broad enough and strategically broad enough so that you are able to collect that data. If you're in the business of screen print, it's important to also make sure that you collect attributes on the type of the artwork that you're putting on your product. Whether that's a circular graphic, whether that's a text graphic, across the chest graphic, it's a left chest graphic, because you're going to find out if a screen printers out there that you are going to learn that your customer actually gravitates also to a very certain particular graphic types in versus just being all over, which you can then create a very strategic plan for your graphic designers to design into that plan versus just designing plethora of amounts of designs and you're just hoping that some of them will sell. Go ahead, Samuel. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah, and we're moving away from the mass production cycle of our industry into on-demand customization. And what our focus is going forward is that the consumer will take control of their design of their products. And the designers that are designing will have like they used to have the patterns when your mother would go to the store and buy a pattern and bring it home and make a product. Their digital designs will be a part of the assets that they own online that you can pay a royalty to be able to use their designs. So there's a lot of things that we're using in the digital world to offset the analog way of doing business and also the wasteful way of doing business. And on-demand customization, we can actually take your measurements now with our app. We can then have you go in and design the product based on what your product design and desires are. Customize it pretty much any way you want it. 10 days later, it's made. 3 to 5 days later, it's at your front door, made to measure. And it will be at a third the cost of what you would pay for at a department store.
That's beautiful. And Samuel, I mean, and that's really, I mean, every time I talk to you, I'm always get fascinated with what you have built in terms of the on-demand production. And, we hear on demand a lot of, screen printers, embroiderers, but in your particular case, what you're talking about is doing on demand, like product like denim as an example. So, I mean, I'm sure that there's going to be lots of people who will really want to hear a little bit more about how do you overcome the challenge in terms of, and this is often asked of me as well, Well, how do you come over a challenge that customer nowadays is so spoiled to receive everything today, right? They placed an order this morning and they already want it in their front doors this afternoon. So how do you guys overcome that challenge with your customer base to educate them that it's okay if you wait for 10 days, there's so much more benefit that you're receiving by not only just receiving something that truly fits to your body, but potentially also cutting down on the waste. I mean, talking about sustainability, I mean, this is the best way to be sustainable is because there's no waste.
Well, we have the opportunity to offer higher quality fibers because we're offering them in gray goods. And a lot of our fabrics, we dye on demand based on our consumption rate from the line. We also have the ability to offer new fabrics that are sustainable fabrics, all the different new types of fibers that are coming out. We are working with those fibers. So because of the way we're setting up our production cycles and our gray good cycles, we're giving you Italian goods. Say if you want to make a suit with our products, it's all Italian piece goods. How are you going to go out and buy an Italian suit made to measure for under $300? I mean, that's where you're making the difference at. So your price points and then the quality is where the difference is going to come in for the customer. And once they experience that, then they're not going to go back to buying it the other way, and where they have to have a product altered in the store to have it fit. You've got to wait 3 to 5 days for that to alter the suit for you. And then you go in there and try on 300 pair of jeans and none of them fit. There's just all kinds of offsets that you're doing. The other side of it is your cost of logistics. I mean, you've got the Suez Canal right now being bombarded by all your container ships coming through the Suez right now are being shot up by the Houthis over there. The Panama Canal right now has, 2 months ago, there was 200 container ships backed up because there's no water in the Panama Canal. So they're actually building a train track across to be able to bring the containers across the Panama Canal now. There's all kinds of things going on globally that are affecting our industry that people aren't really paying attention to. The thing that you talked about that's most interesting is when you start building out all those SKUs and you go down and put the math to it and talk about the minimum order per style, then you talk about custom fabrics that have to be 1,000 meters per fabric. Your minimum gets so high that they have to overproduce. And that's where the overproduction comes from.
Yep.
If a young designer stayed within the factory's gray goods and built off those gray goods, then they would be a lot more profitable, a lot more successful than they are trying to design all these, I call them costumes, and then you got to teach the guy how to sew 20 pieces of a costume. And they're looking at you, shaking their head, saying, "No, I will pass on your production," or they'll charge you for that production, or you'll get some products that are so poorly made because they put them in a factory that was not desirable. And you need to go to China or go to some of the third world countries and see how they produce products. Everybody's products go through the same factories, and it depends on what your volume is and how quick you gave them the order as to what factory it goes to. And if you're not in the first line to get your products through there, then you're going to a second level factory. And if the longer you wait, then you can go down to a fourth level factory where you get some stuff in from the factory that you would be ashamed to put on anybody's rack.
100%. You brought up a fantastic point. Anybody else want to add to that before we move forward? I have one more point I want us to talk about is the collaborative cross-function approach. And this really applies to anybody who is not just a entrepreneur, a solo entrepreneur, and they're just starting up. I mean, they're just the only ones who are working. However, that still applies because they could still be cross-functionally talking to their factories and becoming more strategic partners versus just treating them as a supplier. But where I think what I want to stress is when the brands are already a little bit more established, you are typically have at least 3 departments, right? You'll have a marketing department, you're going to have logistical operations department, and then you're going to have your design product development department. So in order for us to assure that the assortment will actually succeed, what we need to make sure that we don't design in a silo. And that what happens a lot of times when we actually unveil the processes of the design and product development in a lot of our clients. Is that the product development teams, they are creating this, trends, they're setting up what the design will be, they're creating what the assortment will be, they design everything. And then if they're lucky enough, then they will present it at the very end to the whole company and say, hey, this is what we've done, now let's start the season. Where we see the bigger success is that when we are involving at the very beginning stages, before you even created any designs, when you're just starting to plan your assortment, you actually start to involve your other departments like marketing and logistics. and operations, because that is going to give you a lot of great intel that will help you to make your assortment decision of what that breadth assortment will be in much more strategic way. As well as what it allows this approach is to plant the seed in the minds of the supporting departments that will later on be able to help you sell that product. You can have an amazing product, but without the right marketing strategies, no one will ever see it, right? You could have an amazing product, but without the right resources and the plan of how the operationally going to manufacture it and receive it and logistically ship, it's going to be a nightmare, right? And the season will fail if you don't have that in collaboration with your departments. So we often see is that it's really critical to start from the very beginning, having that cross-function approach, having the conversations at the brainstorming level, midway when you're almost ready to design your product, which we always recommend, do not design your product until you have an assortment plan with holes that is going, because designer is going to design into, right? So meaning that you already identified your 80-20, you identified your 20% in essentials, you've identified your 30% of newness, you plot the holes, the placeholders of what that 30% going to look like in terms of the amount of SKUs, in terms of the amount of the product categories, product class, and only you pass that plan to your designer so that they can strategically design into those pockets, so they don't over-design and they don't waste resources and time. Meanwhile, that's when we wanted to involve our cross-functional departments so that we can start strategically planning the different strategies of how we're going to merchandise that product, how we're going to market that product, what we're going to need in terms of the supportive materials, in terms of videos, pictures, and how we're going to present that product to the customer, so that we can start planning that ahead of time before we even received our prototypes and actually finalized our designs. Often companies leave that to the last moment. And that is where it becomes a big nightmare for when we actually going to start selling. So allowing that and bringing that cross-functional feedback, and you're going to be surprised how much feedback you actually going to receive from an example. I'll give you an example. We had a client who constantly had a problem, a logistical problem of the product is not getting and arriving on time. Well, once we start reverse the process and actually involve the operational teams to be able to influence the decision-making on what the assortment would look like, we realized that the problem was with the fabric that they constantly kept using. And the operational manufacturers kept telling them that this fabric is not sustainable to be able to produce it with the right timing because of the yarn availability. So the moment we reversed it and the actual designers and the planners actually heard that, we were able to fix that within one season, because we found the fabric that from operational point of view, or if you're working with your manufacturer and having those cross-function conversations, there potentially might always going to be a substitute that potentially you can bring in, that always yarn is available, or to Samuel's point, the gray goods are always available. They switched that and then asked the designers to design into that fabric, and then that's it, the problem was gone. So just thinking about how do we bring in the cross-functional input of teams at early stage of our product, of our creation of assortment. And when we are done with our assortment, is to actually always have a assortment review with all of your company resources, whether that's sales team, operations, marketing. I even bring in financial teams into those assortment reviews, because if everybody's bought into the vision of where the assortment came from and what it is, it's going to be much easier for have everybody be on board to actually help you sell that product and assure the success of the season. Anybody want to kind of jump in and add to that? Richard, do you have anything to say on that one? Or Phoenix, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, I think it's like, again, everything you're saying is so exceptional. So totally makes sense, and it's very inspiring.
Thank you, Phoenix. I appreciate for your feedback. Richard, how do you guys experiencing anything like this? Are you guys talking to cross-functionally with your factories?
Well, for our factories, we were originally out of China, and we had a really great relationship with them. really like them, but we started to run into some concerns with their cotton supply. So we ended up moving to Pakistan, where we are still working on our relationship with them. We haven't found that their products are as good as we would like. We sure miss our old factory in China, so we really like them. But you know, we're in a position where we're trying to do something positive, and you know, whether it's true or not, there's a perception out there of what's going on in Xinjiang, and it does not look good on our brand. We found to continue to use that source, so we're in a position where we really want to work with the Chinese, but at the same time, we need to find a new manufacturer, and we just haven't found one that we really love like we had. So, yeah, we're, you know, it really speaks to us, like what you're saying, because we're trying to find that right fit.
So Richard, here's my point on that. Really, you brought up a really good point, is to always make sure that you have a diverse supply chain, at least different type of regions of countries, because you don't know what's going to happen politically, logistically. You want to be able to have a quick pivot. But I'm going to ask you one question before I'm going to make a suggestion. What prompted you to go to Pakistan?
Well, they had reached out to us, and it was we knew where their supply chain was coming from, so there was a supply chain stewardship. It was a smaller factory, we're a smaller brand, so they were able to fill our needs, and they had ethical practices that we were able to confirm with them at their factory. So that was why we originally went with them. However, you know, we had like some canvas bags made with them, and there was typos on them, and I was like, what? So that's why we're trying to move back away from them now, and we're just kind of a small business without a factory.
So Richard, you just brought up a good point. They reached out to you.
Yes.
So one thing that when we talk about building a supply chain, you got to take a step back and do a lot of research and planning yourself first before you actually going to scout for the right location. And the reason I'm saying the same way as each factory has its own unique capabilities, and you want to make sure you find the factory that matches their capabilities matches your need, because every factory doesn't want to turn away business, and they're all going to say yes to everything. So your goal is to identify what are they best at and whether that aligns with what you're doing. And what that brings me to the conversation is, if you go back and do a little bit more deeper dive on the research of just supply chain overall by product category, you're going to find out that Pakistan is not on the list of top few that is going to be the best to produce denim product. Yes, they could with cotton, but they're not necessarily best for denim product. So thinking about what other countries, so think outside of the box and do that little bit more research to find out what countries that actually have a higher capabilities of producing cotton denim product will help you to then isolate which country and then start searching for the right factory within those countries. The reason I'm bringing this up is, for example, a lot of people don't overlook Egypt. A lot of people overlook Turkey. A lot of people overlook Vietnam, because it doesn't sound as appealing or often heard as Pakistan or China. So a lot of times right now we're seeing people moving to Mexico, South America. So thinking about where the best regions are actually specializing in the product that you're producing, and going from that end to finding your factory will give you a better success.
Well, thank you. That's really helpful. We were actually looking at Mexico and Vietnam. So my girlfriend's from Vietnam, so she speaks the language and everything, and she can talk with them, and actually we can get a lot more information since she knows their language so well. So
Samuel, go ahead.
One of the things I hear you saying, Richard, that is a big mistake is you don't have an agent in each one of these countries that's doing your project management.
No, we don't. It's been
And that's going to be a problem for you, because if don't have someone at the factory overseeing your production when it comes to you're going to get all kinds of stuff come back. And you should have a project manager or an agent that's overlooking your production for you there. And that'll solve a lot of your issues. And also with factories, they know which factories are the good ones and which ones are the bad ones. And they know also how to negotiate with those guys to be able to get you the best deal and the best product. And so you need to pay that 5% and save yourself a lot of headaches.
Yeah, that would be actually real. Do they help with imports too? Because I did the whole import thing, and it was like a stack of paper like this, and I didn't want to get,
They will
all the
they will help you.
products.
Yeah, they will handle your brokerage and everything all the way through to the point where it leaves China and give you the paperwork to get it into customs here in the U.S. The other place you might want to look is in Peru.
Oh, that's a good one.
Mm-hmm.
No, and I have some of the best denim production that I've ever made coming out of Peru.
That's a great feedback.
The thing, Richard, be careful with the Brazilian denim. It's gorgeous, but there's a high duty on it coming into the U.S.
Okay.
But just watch out for the Brazilian denim down there. It's beautiful goods, but the duty, once you use it, it's going to be very high coming in. And Peru has a treaty with us for NAFTA, so you don't have to worry about some of the issues that you have, just like Mexico does.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. It was all very helpful. I was also taking notes on what you guys are all saying. So
very good.
And that's why DA does this, is to give everybody some information to be able to help us move through this. We're going to have to reshore and rebuild our industries here. And when you see Macy's shutting down 150 retail stores, that's 45,000 people that just lost their jobs here in the U.S. And I'm working right now with Saipan. They had 69 factories shut down there that were in the fashion industry in one time. It almost destroyed the whole country. I mean, the whole island. I mean, it was just this very destructive to the whole island there. So there's a lot of things going on globally right now that we have to really be careful with. The other thing that you need to do as quick as you can, Richard, is try to reshore back here to the U.S. And you need to look over in the Carolinas, because there's a lot of good production starting to be built over in the Carolinas. The other thing you might want to focus in on is hemp.
Mm-hmm.
yes, we've looked at hemp. That's interesting you mentioned that, because one of our manufacturers just mentioned hemp, but the cost was prohibitively high. So, but we've read that you can get hemp for a lot cheaper in other places.
We have, if you need hemp in your Chinese factories, we've got hemp ready to go, and we have a patent that two patents on the gumming process, which makes it like silk. We actually have 20 fabrics in hemp that we developed in our factories in China that are degummed, and it's a patented process that we're the only ones that have, that we can make it silky because it has a coarse hand to it.
Oh, nice. Wonderful.
So it's open stock, Richard, so you can order, minimum you order just to test it out.
Yeah, I would love to get your guys' contacts too after this, if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. And we, I believe people are left theirs in the chat as well. So you can look at the chat. Samuel left his as well. So guys,
Richard,
go ahead.
I'm sorry. I've been doing denim for the last 40 years. Yeah. So we've got a few secrets that I'm willing to share. This industry right now, as we rebuild it, is going to be an opportunity for anybody that has the ability to make the transition. And you're going to have a digital mindset to do it, because this analog is over with.
100%. Well, guys, on that note, I wanted to thank everybody for their time. I want to be respectful of everybody's time, because I know we were running a little bit 1 minute behind over. So thank you so much for being on this call. We're excited to see you guys next month. I hope you are all going to join us. And I'm looking forward just to, if you guys have a moment, just stay on just for 1 more minute to give a little bit of a feedback about this call. And the reason we do that is so that I can be able to share that with others. So hopefully we can continue to grow the amount of people that joining those calls, because I believe that it's more than merrier, so we can truly make an impact within the industry of bringing our expertise to each other and be able to help one another grow.